What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Indigenous rights, First Nations rights. It's one of the hot topic discussions that have taken place since Alberta announced that it was going to allow for a citizen-led referendum on the question on a ballot, a question of, can Alberta leave Canada? I know I'm not saying the question, or at least how the question is, because the question hasn't been drafted. I don't want to quote a possible question verbatim. But one of the things that people have noticed, there's been this huge uproar, and one of the misconceptions, one of the things that people don't really understand is that, and I hear it all the time, anytime I talk to somebody within Alberta, people saying, well, you can't just take the land from First Nations people. They own the land. I've had other videos where we've talked about the actual facts behind that, and no, they don't. In fact, the only lands that are crown land in Alberta during the time of separation are military bases, First Nations reserves, and our national parks, which comprise about 20% of Alberta's total land. What happens in the event that a vote goes through, that a question is asked, and the vote would go through, is it is essentially like a divorce. The federal government, all provinces, and First Nations must sit at the table with those involved in the separation, and they must begin the negotiations of Alberta's departure from Canada. The negotiations are not there for them to say, we don't like what happened, we're not agreeing with what happened, we won't recognize what happened. It's there to say, essentially like dividing assets. What are you taking? What are we taking? How's things going to work with the national parks? What are we going to do with First Nations? Now, many scenarios have been given for First Nations that either things remain the way they are with Canada, they stay a part of Canada, and their treaties and all their agreements with the government of Canada remain the way they are. Nothing changes for them. Or Alberta takes over that agreement from the government of Canada, and the only thing that happens is the agreement changes hands. It goes from Canada to Alberta. Thirdly, a new treaty could be negotiated that actually benefits First Nations people. Now, none of that is discussed whenever these uproars are going on, and a lot of that has to do with political, financial interference. I want to talk about that today. Corey Morgan of the Western Standard, good friend of the channel, good friend of mine, and I'm hoping to get him on the channel very soon to talk a little bit more about the reality that Alberta is facing and the laws and the misinformation that's going around. Or at least when I say misinformation, the facts that we're not being told about Alberta separation. In fact, Corey Morgan has a best-selling book on Amazon, The Sovereignist's Handbook. Definitely go pick that up. It's a good read. It's a fantastic read. I love the book. I've read it a few times. Actually had him sign my copy when I seen him a few weeks ago. Take a listen to what Corey has to say here. And go check out the Western Standard. I will have a link to this video in the description down below. Corey puts out some great content, but his argument here, and I'm not going to play the whole 46 minutes, obviously, but his argument here is very telling as to what the reality is, what we're facing in Alberta.
I mean, it's undeniable the status quo is serving Indigenous communities terribly, and nothing short of some sort of radical action is going to change that. Neither Western independence nor a referendum held for independence violates treaty rights, by the way, though some people who are financially married to the current system love to spread that misconception. Consultation with Indigenous citizens, though, it is constitutionally required to make major changes in Canada, and it should be, but consent isn't required. We got to remember that. But what better means of consultation can there be, and consent anyways, than holding a general referendum? Western independent supporters must reach out to the Indigenous communities and foster independent support among them. I mean, the conditions on Western reserves are abhorrent. Thousands of citizens are living in abject poverty and horrific socioeconomic conditions. While there's some chiefs, bureaucrats, and lawyers, they find themselves very comfortably served under the current system. Most of the common citizens on reserves are living trapped in a cycle of dependency and misery. One of the best and unexpected developments with the current surge of support for Western independence is that it brought treaties into the sphere of public discussion. Advocates for the status quo have always liked trying to quell discussion of systematic reforms by howling that any attempt to change things would violate the treaties. Now, since most people both on and off reserves never actually read a treaty, These activists have gotten away with pulling the wool over people's eyes for a long time. When opponents
Now, I want to touch on that because that is actually the case. Now, we've seen it here with the chiefs. Now, keep in mind that a lot of these chiefs, as Corey says, that those of First Nations are not living under good conditions. The chiefs keep the majority of the money. They don't pass it on to their people. The band leaders keep it all. If you've ever been to a lot of, there are good reserves out there that do actually look after their people, but some reserves, especially if you've ever been out in Manitoba, very poorly run. They never look after their people. Take a look at what it is. Alberta chief tells Premier Smith to pack her bags. Pro tip, the next time you want to pull a publicity stunt, don't do it under an NDP banner with Naheed Nenshi present. It cheapens the whole thing and makes it look like a stunt. Well, it was a stunt. Now, I'm not going to play the audio from that because there is copyright music in it. There's no need to play it. But I'm going to get into a little later in this video why people should not be taking the words of these chiefs very seriously. I'm going to let Corey wrap it up a little bit with a little bit more information, and then we're going to move on to that.
Independents tried to claim independence was impossible due to the treaties. It drove people into actually going online and looking at those treaties for themselves. They're available, and they're surprisingly simple documents. Most of the text in the treaties is dedicated to defining the extent of the reserves. The treaties are all very clear in establishing that Indigenous bands are actually forever ceding all claims to the territories outside of those reserves. Unless a referendum is proposing to change reserve boundaries, it's not in conflict with the treaties. The treaties establish some other rights, such as offering small annual stipends to chiefs and council leaders and providing resources for agricultural development, whetstones, a certain amount of horses and such. The payment figures are clearly out of date, as are the aspirations of creating an agriculturally focused culture from Indigenous people. All the same, there aren't actually that many direct obligations placed on governments from within those treaties. No tax exemptions or housing obligations or funding for advocacy groups like the Assembly of First Nations. One ironic obligation entrenched within treaties was that the government was to provide education for Indigenous children. That clause was supported by the government and Indigenous leaders alike, as it was hoped at the time it would help the next generation of Indigenous kids to integrate productively with the modern world. Well, guess what that got them? That led to the creation of the residential school system, which ended poorly, to say the least. Today, Indigenous reserves are rife with crime and poverty. Corruption's rampant among Indigenous leadership groups, while decades of massive spending increases and payouts only appears to make things worse. The average Indigenous man in Alberta dies 19 years younger than the average non-Indigenous person. How bad does it have to get before serious changes are made? Well, the treaties can't be changed. Most of the regulations managing the government of the reserve system can. They're from the outdated and racist Indian Act. Acts are just legislation, and they can be changed at any time if politicians find the political will.
So right there, the treaties can be changed at any time if politicians find political will. Now, as he said, these reservations run rampant with crime, corruption. People are ignored. Now, I stand on the rights of those in First Nations who deserve better. And I do believe, as Corey Morgan states in his video, that Indigenous citizens have the most to gain from provincial independence. They do, if a new treaty is discussed, one that benefits the people, not the leaders. If we take a look at an article that even the first the Western Standard covered, here's where you know it's all just show. It's a circus. Alberta First Nation chief took $55,000 to oppose oil sands and oppose Alberta independence. A prominent First Nations leader in northern Alberta, Chief Alan Adam of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, is facing criticism after records revealed he received $55,000 from the American Tides Foundation to oppose oil sands development. The payment disclosed in a U.S. tax filing was made to a numbered company linked to Adam and other ACFN officials. The money was used to support political activities against the oil sands, including Adam's appearance alongside singer Neil Young at an anti-oil event in Toronto. The event, which targeted Canada's energy sector, was criticized as being orchestrated by foreign interests. Though the money was routed through the layers of corporate ownership, a search of Alberta's corporate registry confirmed links to Adam and other elected officials. The Tide Foundation has a history of funding Canadian environmental and Indigenous activism, along with its U.S. lobbying. The payment has sparked debate about foreign influence, in Canadian energy policy, and whether elected officials should be allowed to accept such funds. Of course not. It's a conflict of interest. If a foreign oil company says ExxonMobil was depositing secret payments into the bank accounts of MPs, it would be a scandal, says Ezra Levant. Those MPs would face an RCMP investigation, Exxon would likely be charged with bribery, and the media on both sides of the border would have a field day. Despite the controversy, Adams remains an outspoken critic of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith's push forward on political independence referendum. Adams has been seen highly vocal against Bill 54, which makes it easier to trigger referendums, including one on independence from Canada. Pick up your bag and go, said Adam in a message to Premier Smith. You're not welcome here anymore. Adam urges that Alberta cannot become independent without the consent of First Nations. That's a lie. Again, who paid him to say that? Again, he did this under an NDP banner, keep in mind, with Naheed Nenshi. Adam says that Treaty 8 is binding nation-to-nation agreement with Canada, not Alberta. ACFN and other Treaty 8 nations have warned they will defend their rights and may stop resource development if the province moves ahead with independence without consultation. The controversy has added fuel to the already tense debate around sovereignty, oil development, and the role of Indigenous nations in Alberta's future. Adam has not publicly addressed the $55,000 payment. Well, of course not. Of course not. This is the problem when it comes to Alberta talking about separation. There are laws, and then there are false pretenses that are put out in public display to make people believe that what we're doing is terrible, what we're doing is undemocratic, that it's not in the best interests of the people, that it's violating the rights of those who had their land taken from them. The reality, as Corey Morgan says, Indigenous men are dying 19 years earlier than other men. Their living conditions are poor. The crime rates are higher than anything we've seen. In fact, they're treated worse by the Alberta government than they claim that they're being treated with a separation vote. It's appalling. It's appalling for those First Nations people that deserve a crack at life, that deserve better living conditions, that deserve clean drinking water, that deserve the ability to get away from substance abuse, to get away from areas of rich crime, to be a part of Alberta's success. All of this could be possible if a vote went through. These corrupt chiefs were told they were the ones who should pack their bags. Perhaps the Tides Foundation can set them up with homes in the United States where they can continue lobbying against oil companies. But to say that Danielle Smith isn't welcome in Alberta because she's allowing citizens to exercise their democratic right to land that they don't necessarily have a veto on is appalling. Let me know your thoughts down below in the description, or down below the video. Check the description, I was about to say, for a link again to Corey Morgan's full video talking about it. Very knowledgeable man, very well versed in Alberta sovereignty. Again, I'm hoping to get him on the channel in the near future. It'd be great to sit down and talk with him. I've had an extensive relationship with Corey Morgan, and he is one of the smartest individuals I've ever met in Alberta. Looking forward to talking with him soon. I hope you guys are looking forward to that as well. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure to leave a thumbs up and a comment down below. It helps push this video out in the YouTube algorithm, tells other people that this is stuff they need to hear, it's stuff they need to see. Share it out on your social media pages. When you're hitting the subscribe button, make sure you turn on your bell for all notifications so you don't miss a beat anytime a new video is dropped on this channel. Join me live here each and every Friday for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show where I sit down with the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we talk about everything going on this week in politics, everything we know that's coming up ahead in politics, as well as open discussion amongst the greatest YouTube community on the platform. We look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos each and every week, but I most importantly look forward to hearing what you have to say this Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.